Holder, and welcome to the channel. Today it's all about the slick stuff. That's right, I'm talking about motor oil. What happens when we change from a heavyweight oil like this 2050 to a lightweight oil like this 0W-10? Is it worth any power? So now it's time to drain the oil. We're going to do our oil test. Drain fitting there, got our drain pan. We're actually going to reuse this oil. That's right, recycling. We'll get this thing off, change out our filter, we'll get things going. So this is what we happen to have laying around for our oil test. Got some 0W-20 racing oil, synthetic. Let's check it out. So I'll go ahead and put some in the filter. Screw that back on. Stuff looks pretty thin, pretty lightweight. Okay guys, we got the lightweight oil in. Let's head to the console, start it up, find out what it does. And we're here. Okay, we got temperature in it. Let's find out what she does. We're going through it again. Drain out the 0W-10. Make room for the 2050. So now it's time to put in our 2050. We've got some more racing oil, zinc technology, synthetic. See what it does. Okay guys, let's jump right in on our oil test. Our first test is comparing conventional motor oil, cheap stuff we get from the auto parts store. We went over to AutoZone and grabbed this, and then comparing that to a good synthetic oil because Westech already had some Lucas oil laying around that they weren't using. We went ahead and tried that, but any other synthetic oil will also work. And what we did on this test is we stayed with the same weight, because you can also go down in weight, but we have that test. That would be the second one. We're going to compare different viscosities of oil and see if there's any power there. But for this one, we stayed both of them at a 530. We had a synthetic versus a non-synthetic. Both of the oils were new. We did a fresh oil change. We allowed the things to get up to temperature, and so that the oil pressure curves were the same, and so that the oil temperature and the air fuel and the timing all remained stabilized. And here is what happened. Run with our STP 530 from the local auto parts store. Our 5.3, by the way, was an L33 all aluminum junkyard motor that I got that I do all this testing with. We had a Brian Tooley Racing red hot cam. I'll go ahead and put the specs up here. You can take a look at that. We also had a valve spring upgrade. We were running this with a fast LSXR manifold and 102mm throttle body. We had 1 7/8" headers and a collector extension, although no mufflers. And we ran this thing basically with a with a Holley HP management system and 80-pound Deca injectors in it. So we optimized the air fuel and timing for each combination and run first with our STP oil. Our combination produced right at 480 to 481 horsepower. Peak torque checked in at 416 foot-pounds. And then here's what happened after we drained the oil, let the motor run for a while, let the oil get heated up, let the water temperature get heated up. We made a few pulls to, slice and dice the oil just a little bit. So get it so that it was, equivalent. We ran this thing with Lucas 5W-30 synthetic oil, and here are the results. And as we can see, basically there's just no change really. When we keep the viscosity the same, even though we went from a non-synthetic to a synthetic, there wasn't really a big change in power. We're talking about onesies and twosies here and there. So if you're looking to gain power from an oil change, you should more be thinking about, hey, I should change my oil because the oil that's in it has been in there for 2 or 5 or 10,000 miles, and it's probably time. Because what will happen is your oil pressure will actually start to go down when the oil gets bad. I know in my truck when it gets contaminated, it gets fuel soaked because there's obviously blow by in my 320,000 mile 5.3. So something to think about. The most important thing, changing your oil. But now let's check out what happens when we change the viscosity. Now we're taking a look at what happens when we run 5W30 non-synthetic oil versus 5W30 synthetic oil. Both of them are new, our 5W30 from the auto parts store and then our Lucas oil. Let's take a look and see what happens when we actually change the viscosity. In this case, we're comparing some Lucas 2050 synthetic oil to some much lighter Lucas 0W-10 weight, again, synthetic oil. And let's see what happens both to power, and I'm also going to show you the oil pressure curves run at the same temperature. So this is our combination. It's still the 5.3 liter Brian Tooley Racing red hot cam, fast intake manifold, and throttle body, our long tube headers, and all of that stuff. So the same configuration. Equipped with the 2050 oil, our power output peaked at 470.3 horsepower, and peak torque checked in at 409.7 foot-pounds. Here's what happened when we replaced the 2050 oil with 0W-10 oil. Peak power jumped up to 481.2 horsepower, and peak torque checked in at 415.9, so 416 foot-pounds. As you can see, we're definitely seeing a change in power from the change in oil viscosity, and let's try to figure out why. And the best way to do that is to let's take a look at our oil pressure curves. So this is our oil pressure curve with the 2050 oil, and here is our oil pressure curve with the 1040 oil. And I'm going to move myself up out of the way so you can get a better idea. So we had a change in peak oil pressure at 6,500 RPM. With our 0W-10 weight oil, peak oil pressure was 68 PSI. It was still rising from 3,000 all the way up to 6,500, but not by much. So we had 68 pounds there, but with our 2050, peak oil pressure was 94 PSI. And again, same temperature, so all this is just from a change in viscosity. This is a pretty big change in oil pressure, which gives us an idea why there is a fairly significant change in power. Let's get to our conclusion. Okay guys, what's the takeaway on our comparison between the heavyweight 2050 oil and in our case the lightweight 0W-10 oil? Well, the 0W-10 lightweight oil did make more power as shown in the video. But the question is that the only question you might have when buying your oil? I know we all want more power, but there's more things to consider. If you're choosing a lightweight oil, here's one of the reasons I wouldn't buy lightweight oil and put it in my street car, or more importantly, my street truck. When I pull up to a light and the thing idles down at 600 or 700 RPM, I personally don't want to see less than 10 pounds of idle oil pressure. Even if it were okay, even if it didn't hurt anything, I'd like to see more oil pressure at idle. So the question then becomes, would you choose the lightweight oil for your street car? Let me know in the comments. I'm Richard Holder. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. I'll keep testing. I have another video coming out on expensive oil versus inexpensive oil. Which one would you choose?